Welcome back to the channel. Still having trouble with this thing not starting. I was working fine after the PMD was replaced, and I put one of my old PMDs on there. Could just be that it was really old and went bad again. Drove fine for, I don't know, handful of days, highway driving, in-town driving. But this morning, dropped one of my kids off to school, came back, started it up. I was gonna take my other kid to school, ran for about 30 seconds and just turned off. No weird hesitation or stumbling or revving and then dying, just turned off like you would turn the key off. I've gone through, checked for fuel pressure. If you haven't done that before, you've got a, that's too zoomed in. Down here, underneath the truck, you've got this little valve right here. And if you pull it out, like that, and then while you're doing that, just turn the key to the on position, your lift pump will come on and you'll start seeing fuel coming out of there. Make sure fuel's coming out of there, that way your lift pump's working. I didn't put a pressure gauge on anything to test the pressure, but I do have a new Raptor 100 lift pump coming, so that's going to get replaced anyway. That could be the problem if there's not enough pressure, if there's only like 1 or 2 psi of pressure, which I have a feeling my lift pump was the cause of my PMD going bad last time. But if there's not enough pressure there, that could be the reason that you're not able to start the motor. So I'm getting fuel coming out of there. I don't know what the pressure is, but fuel's coming out. The other thing you want to do is test your optical sensor and your crank sensor. I went in and located the optical sensor plug. It's up here. I'll try to show you on camera. What I'm going to do is unplug the optical sensor, try to crank it over and start it. And if it starts with just the crank sensor plugged in and not the optical sensor, then the optical sensor is bad, needs to be replaced. If that doesn't work, still doesn't start, plug your optical sensor back in and then unplug your crank sensor. And if it starts with the crank sensor unplugged, then you have a bad crank sensor. That way you can verify if one of those is bad. If both of them are bad, it's not going to start. It's unusual for both of them to go bad at the same time, but could happen. Coincidences happen. But if one or the other is functioning and working, this is a good way to identify if one of them is bad. So I'm going to unplug the optical sensor, give it a crank, then unplug the crank sensor, give it a crank, see if either of them is bad and it functions. So I'm on top of this thing. Let me see if I can show you where the optical sensor is. Underneath this jumbled mess is your injection pump. And this connector right here, connecting into that little box, that's the connector for your optical sensor, and this is your optical sensor. So very gently, I'm gonna pull this tab up once I get off camera and push that connector back. I don't want to shove it all the way too far because I'm gonna have to plug it back in and I don't want to have to go hunting for it. I just want to get it pushed back enough to disconnect it from the electrical connectors, the pins, and crank the car up and see if it'll start. All right, I've got that connector pushed back a little bit. Let's go see if it'll start. All right, we've got our glow plug light. Let's give it a shot. Let's try one more time, and then we'll go back to troubleshooting. Nope, that wasn't it. So let's plug that guy back in, and we'll try the crank sensor. All right, got the crank sensor disconnected. Let's give this a shot. Nope. All right, so one other thing it could be is the engine shut-off solenoid, which is right next to that optical sensor on top of the injection pump. There is a couple ways to test that, and I don't want to pull it off. My new PMD gets here tomorrow. I'm gonna wait until that PMD gets here and put it on and see if that fixes the issue. And if it doesn't, I'm gonna replace the lift pump, which should be here over the weekend as well. Get that new lift pump on there, make sure I have good fuel pressure, because again, I have a feeling low fuel pressure from the lift pump is what started to cause all these issues with the old PMD going bad as well. So I'm gonna get those out of the way before I start pulling a bunch of electrical things off and components that could be totally fine. Get the obvious thing out of the way first, especially since the parts are already on order and they'll be here soon. I'm gonna take a break for a couple days until all the parts get here, and we'll reconvene in a little bit. I'm gonna try one more thing. So I had this old PMD plugged back in. This is the old one that failed on me, but then it started and would idle and then fail again as I was driving. So this is the one that had failed. I plugged it in just to see if it would start on this one. I'm gonna unplug this and plug it back into the old one that was known good, that I've been driving on for a few days now. Let's plug that in. Okay. It didn't start this morning on this one. Well, who knows? Let's see if it'll start. I have a feeling that PMD is about to go kaput as well, and I really have a feeling that it's due to low fuel pressure from the injection from the lift pump. Let's see if it'll start. All right, got glow plugs. Holy crap! I hate you, you stupid diesel 6.5 GM piece of garbage. Freaking so frustrated with this thing sometimes. Sorry for my French. Okay. I'm glad I didn't tear into the other stuff as far as the sensors and such. All right, I've got two brand new PMDs coming in. They're both the newer version of the Flight Systems PMD that is sold and labeled by Dorman, D-O-R-M-A-N. I'll put the part number and a link in the description below. I bought them from Rock Auto. They were the cheapest place. They were under 200 bucks. Everywhere else, they were somewhere between 250 and 450. I got two of them coming, one to run, one as a spare. And that new part number, the XD, from all my research, looks like it's spec'd out with specific language around being more resilient to heat and failure. So I'm gonna put that on. Then I'm gonna put that Raptor 100 lift pump on. That's gonna give me a ton more fuel flow from the fuel tank up to the high pressure injection pump. From everything I've seen in all the 6.5 turbo diesel forums, the Hummer forums, and talking to a few diesel mechanics locally, factory lift pump is good for very light use, but once you get into high load or high speeds at high revs on the highway, the factory lift pump, if you measure the pressure, it basically runs, when you're measuring the pressure between the filter and the injection pump, you'll see probably 1 psi, 0 psi, sometimes even a little bit of a vacuum. That's terrible for the injection pump. It will cause it to run hotter and be under more load, and that will in turn put more pressure on the PMD because it's having to drive that injection pump at a higher load. And the PMD or the injection pump, one or both of them, will get damaged. In this case, my problem is obviously the PMD. I've tested everything, I've driven around, I haven't been able to get it to fail to where I can identify the injection pump as being the problem, and the injection pump was replaced about 1,000 miles ago, maybe 900 miles ago, give or take. No, I think it's closer to 1,000 miles ago, with a rebuilt unit, and it's been running fine until I did 70, 75 miles an hour, which is really at the higher end of what these H1s are comfortable at on the highway for maybe, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes, just driving on the toll road with everybody still passing me by. And about, I don't know, a couple hours after that is when that PMD, the previous one, died. So at this point, Raptor 100 fuel pump, it's going to get installed once it comes in over the weekend. That's going to give me 14 psi all the way through the higher RPMs and the higher loads. It's not going to drop on the pressure. It's going to give me tons of fuel flow. I'm going to put the new XD Dorman Flight Systems PMD on, and we're going to drive it around and try to get this thing to fail. If it doesn't, awesome. If it does, I'm going to chase down whatever other issue there is. In the meantime, I hope this video was helpful for you if you're troubleshooting some of the same issues. So frustrating sometimes. The black magic of all this diesel stuff, I hate it. Wish it was just a gas motor, but it's awesome to drive when it works. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you next time on the video where I'm installing the Raptor fuel pump. I'll show you all that's involved in getting it wired, get all the plumbing done, and then what I'm doing with my custom gigantic heatsink mount and battery tie down all in one with dual PMDs mounted on it. I know you can buy that $600+ one from Mod Mafia. I just wanted to make my own. It's going to cost a lot less. It'll perform great. And if anybody wants to make their own, watch the next video and I'll show you how and which parts I use. In the meantime, I love you guys. I'll see you next time.